We all know Keir Starmer has completely lost the plot. But now, we're seeing a major divide within Europe as leaders push back hard against his latest outrageous proposal. His idea of sending British troops into Ukraine as part of a so-called peacekeeping mission has been met with strong opposition, and some of the biggest players in Europe aren't holding back in their response. In today's video, we're breaking down the latest developments, looking at why Starmer's plan has been widely rejected and what this growing divide in Europe means for the future. But before we get started, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more British content. Germany has firmly rejected UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer's proposal to deploy British troops to Ukraine as part of a peacekeeping mission, a move that has now sparked tensions among European leaders. Starmer had outlined his vision for Britain to take a leading role in post-war security guarantees for Ukraine, emphasizing that this would require putting British troops in harm's way to help enforce a potential ceasefire. However, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has slammed the idea, calling it completely premature and highly inappropriate. Speaking after a meeting of European leaders in Paris, Scholz admitted that he was a little irritated by the suggestion, highlighting major disagreements over Europe's future military involvement in Ukraine. Divisions emerge in Europe. Scholz's strong response came as it became clear that European nations are deeply divided over the role they should play in securing Ukraine's future. At the Paris summit, Britain, France, and Sweden expressed support for deploying a peacekeeping force to help monitor and enforce a ceasefire. However, Germany, Poland, and Spain have shown significant reluctance, arguing that such a move is premature and could further escalate tensions. The disagreements were so intense that Scholz left the meeting early, further underlining the cheaping. The deep rifts within Europe over the future of Ukraine's security. Scholz rejects the proposal. During a press conference, Scholz made his position clear, stating it is completely premature and the completely wrong time to be having this discussion now. I am even a little irritated by these debates. He explained that discussions about troop deployments were being conducted over the heads of Ukrainians, referring to the fact that peace talks have not even started yet. Scholz went further, stating, "This is highly inappropriate, to put it bluntly, and honestly, we don't even know what the outcome will be." This statement highlights Germany's cautious stance. The belief that discussing peacekeeping troops before a ceasefire is even reached is not only premature, but could also complicate diplomatic efforts. Why is Germany opposed? Germany has long been hesitant about sending troops to Ukraine, fearing that any deployment of NATO forces could be misinterpreted by Russia as a direct escalation of the conflict. Scholz has repeatedly warned against actions that could risk turning the war into a NATO-Russia confrontation. Furthermore, Germany has argued that security discussions must involve Ukraine directly, and that imposing a peacekeeping force before negotiations take place would be counterproductive. With Britain and France pushing for stronger security guarantees for Ukraine and Germany and other European nations resisting, this division within Europe is becoming more apparent. The larger debate over a European army has also been reignited, something that Scholz openly disagreed with during the summit. His early departure from the meeting signals growing frustration over the lack of unity on this issue. Moving forward, it remains to be seen whether Starmer will adjust his approach in response to Germany's opposition, or if he will continue to push for a British-led peacekeeping role in Ukraine. This latest development exposes a deep divide in Europe over how to handle Ukraine's future. While some nations want to take immediate action, others are urging caution, fearing that premature moves could do more harm than good. For now, Germany remains firm. They will not support a peacekeeper deployment until peace talks actually begin, and Ukraine itself is involved in the decision-making process. What do you think? Should Britain go ahead with Starmer's plan, even without Germany's backing? Or is Scholz right to urge patience before discussing peacekeeping troops? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. In other news, ill-advised sentencing reforms and a political drive to appear tough on crime have pushed Britain's justice system to the brink of collapse, according to a damning new report. The Independent Sentencing Review published today reveals how successive governments' knee-jerk policy changes have created an overwhelmed and ineffective system. The analysis found that despite falling crime rates since the mid-1990s and over policy, reliance on longer prison sentences as punishment has left the justice system struggling to cope. The report criticizes policymakers for diverting resources away from probation services and effective alternatives to custody. The study found that rising prison populations cannot be attributed to any considered crime reduction strategy. Instead, the surge stems from successive governments responding to growing pressure to appear tough on crime, focusing on longer sentences rather than effective rehabilitation. The shift in political and media narrative began with the Criminal Justice Act 1991, as each government faced mounting pressure from opposition parties to demonstrate tougher stances on crime. This trend towards penal populism has created an increasingly complex legal landscape that erodes public understanding and confidence in the system. Public opinion remains skewed by press coverage of atypical cases, fostering incorrect beliefs that fewer people are being imprisoned, the review suggested. Former Independent Sentencing Review Chair David Gorkins delivered a stark assessment of the crisis. Last year, we were confronted with the consequences of decades of haphazard policymaking and underinvestment in the criminal justice system, bringing it to the brink of collapse, he said. He criticized politicians for operating in a vacuum, increasing sentences for individual crimes without considering wider systemic impacts. It is time to accept this does not deliver justice for victims. It fails them, Gorkins warned. The report calls for an urgent rethink of how the justice system approaches punishment and rehabilitation. Key legislative changes have driven sentence inflation, including mandatory minimum sentences and the introduction of Schedule 21 for murder sentencing. Extended sentences and new release points for certain offenses have also contributed to the system's strain. Many reforms were implemented in response to tragic events, the report notes. While real-world cases should drive necessary change, the knock-on effects of such reforms have often been overlooked. This has created inconsistencies in the sentencing framework that can leave victims feeling a sense of injustice. The resulting patchwork of policies introduced to correct earlier changes has only added to the system's complexity. The report reveals stark statistics about the ineffectiveness of prison sentences in reducing reoffending. Offenders given custodial sentences show the highest reoffending rates at 37.2% overall. This figure rises dramatically to 56.9% for those serving short sentences, under 12 months. Community orders or suspended sentences appear more effective at preventing repeat offenses. The analysis shows punishment will always be a central aim of the criminal justice system, but it is not the only aim, and prison is not the only form of punishment, Gorkins stated. The strain on the system is further illustrated by the dramatic rise in recall prisoners. In 1993, fewer than 100 prisoners were in custody due to recall. This figure had surged to 9,000 by 2020 and reached 12,920 by the end of December 2024. The report identifies several factors behind this increase, including mandatory supervision periods for shorter sentences. Heightened risk aversion among probation officers following high-profile serious offenses covered by media has also contributed. The review is now examining how sentences are administered, including prison release points, community supervision periods, and the recall system. What are your thoughts on what we discussed in today's video? Let me know down in the comments section below, and make sure you do drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel for more British content.